How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another week in another Destiny 2 build video. Before we get started, I would like to say thank you to everybody who got me to my 350 sub goal that I had set for myself, and now we're going to push towards 400. We're going to keep climbing, clawing, and scrape on our way to the top as long as it takes. So far, it's been really good. It's been a nice steady climb. The videos are getting plenty of views. It's a really nice thing to see, and I appreciate it wholeheartedly. Now, today we're going to be talking about a Warlock build that I've been kind of excited to make. I played with it a little bit this past week, and it has been super fun, and probably the most broken thing that I've actually played with without it actually being, like, super broken. It's just really strong, it's really good, and it's probably one of my favorites. So we're going to get right into that, and we're going to look at the exotics that we're going to be using to make this build work the way we want it to work. The first exotic we're going to look at is the Secant Filament boots, which have the exotic perk Devouring Rift. Casting an Empowering Rift will grant you Devour. Damage dealt by you and your allies from within your Empowering Rift will disrupt combatants. Now, I don't know why people aren't talking about these boots more, or maybe I just haven't seen it, but these boots are probably the strongest boots in the game by far, and I'm going to explain why. First off, it gets us Devour simply by placing down our Empowering Rift. Yes, I know Feed the Void is just a Void ability kill, but with this, it's going to be, just casting a simple Rift. And people are very married to the idea of a healing Rift, but people forget when Devour is activated, you're healed to full, so you can still panic drop a Rift and get health. Secondly, you get the damage buff from Empowering Rift, which is really nice for that extra damage. And finally, to me, which is the biggest selling point for these boots, is that while we're in a Rift, any weapon that doesn't have a champ mod active will stun overload champions. To me, those are the worst champions to deal with, and the weapon options for this season are absolutely awful. So for this, I paired this with another exotic, and that exotic is Wither Horde, which comes with the exotic perk Prime the Evil's Torment. Projectiles fired by this weapon blight the target or nearby areas on impact. Wither Horde, to me, is probably the best special weapon, and honestly the best weapon in the game. And there are a few reasons for that, first of which is the Break the Bank trait, which reads, blighted targets take damage over time and blight the nearby area on death. If you stick a target with it, they will take the damage over time until it wears off or they are defeated. If they're defeated, the blight round pops out of them and onto the floor, starting to damage nearby targets. Secondly, that damage over time will be increased by our Empowering Rift that we're going to be standing in to get the overload or get whatever we want. And lastly, the Catalyst, which gives it max handling and auto-loading holster, which fits this weapon so well. Just with these two alone, you already have a nice, solid build, and you don't really need to add on to it. But you know me by now, if you've watched my videos for the past almost a year now, I like to, add a little spice with the class and the armor mods. So we're going to look at the class setup first that I'm running that makes this build even better. When we start looking at the class stuff, we're going to look at some general stuff to look at before we get into the big details. First things first, I use this with Cataclysm, but you can run this with whichever super you want as long as it's Void. Obviously, Empowering Rift for the exotic perk for Filaments to work. And lastly, I stuck with the good old Vortex Grenades to pair with Fragment aspects and armor mods that we're going to be using, that I'm going to be explaining later on in the video. First thing we're going to look at is Chaos Accelerant. Hold grenade to overcharge your grenade, making it deadlier and more effective. With Vortex Grenades, it will have increased size and linger longer, which is very handy for some of the armor mods we have that we're going to be going over in a little bit, as well as one of the other echoes, fragments, whatever they're called, that we're going to be going over here in just a few minutes. Secondly, we're going to look at Child of the Old Gods. Cast your Rift to create a Void Soul. When you damage a target with your weapon, your Void Soul flies to them and drains them, doing damage and weakening them. When a target is being drained, you are gained grenade and melee energy if you're running a healing Rift, or health if running an Empowering Rift. Defeating a target who is being drained by your Void Soul grants class ability energy. We are running Empowering Rift, so we're going to be getting health back as this Void Soul drains targets, as well as them weakening the target, so this way we can defeat them quicker to get energy back for our next Rift. Honestly, the Child of the Old Gods synergizes really well with any Rift-based build, which is what we're going to be using here today, as well as we're going to be looking at Echo of Remnants. Your lingering grenade effects, Vortex, Grenade, Void Wall, Void Spike, and Axion Bolts have increased duration. This will make our Vortex Grenade last just a little bit extra with the Chaos Accelerant. It's not much, but allows the Vortex Grenade to squeeze out a little bit of damage, which is going to be helpful with some of the stuff we're using later on, obviously. Next, we're looking at Echo of Expulsion. Void ability final blows cause targets to explode, plus 10 intellect. This will allow your grenades and even the Void Soul to make these explosion kills because they count as abilities. Alternatively, you could use Echo of Obscurity and go invisible on finishers if you're wanting to finish targets like that. And lastly, we're going to be looking at Echo of Undermining. Your Void Grenades now weaken targets, minus 20 discipline. This is a very big hit to our discipline. However, for me, the payoff for the extra weakening is worth it with an average amount of discipline after the hit. So like if you have 80 minus 20, you now have 60, works really well. And as well as elemental wells that we're going to be making with the armor mods we're going to be talking about next. Because every time you pick up one of those void wells, you're going to get a chunk of your energy back every single time. The first mod that we're going to be looking at is going to be Reaping Wellmaker. After activating your class ability, your next weapon final blow on a combatant spawns a void elemental well. We'll be casting our rifts a lot with this build that we're working with today, so we may as well use this mod in order to get as many void elemental wells we can so we can use Well of Tenacity. Picking up a void well reduces the damage you take from combatants for a short period of time. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. Putting this in every single build is starting to get stale. It's a very strong mod, especially paired with void subclasses. However, this has turned into the new mod, like the only mod people will ever need, the same as Protective Light once was. However, until they add something new, or, when we get Solar 3.0, because with Solar, at least we can run Explosive Wellmaker and Well of Life, but with this, it's only Reaping Wellmaker and Well of Tenacity. So until they add something new, this is our best option, and it's going to make it so we don't have, and to make it so we don't have to leave our rifts, we're going to use Seeking Wells. Elemental wells you create will move across the ground toward nearby players. Back when elemental wells were introduced, my biggest complaint was having to leave cover to get them, putting yourself at risk and potentially dying, potentially wiping the whole thing. But with this, you can stay mostly in cover and get the benefits of your well mods. The only problem is that occasionally, they have a tendency to get stuck on things. And one of the mods we're going to be using for these void wells alongside of Well Tenacity is Well of Utility. Picking up a Void Elemental Well grants you additional class ability energy. Multiple copies of this mod increase this effect. We want to get our rifts back as soon as possible so we can use it constantly to make more Void Wells. With this, we can get a nice little chunk of energy back when we pick up those Void Wells made by us or even our teammates, since this is a very Void heavy season. A lot of people are making Void Elemental Wells. The last mod on this build can actually be anything you want it to be, whether that be Font of Wisdom for extra super recharge rate, Font of Might for that extra damage, or Volatile Flow for that little bit of extra ad clear. Whichever you use, let me know how it worked out for you. I used Font of Wisdom just so I could get my super back faster. And lastly, we're going to look at 3 mods that aren't needed, but I found to be very, very helpful for this entire build. The first of which is Utility Kickstart. When your class ability energy is fully expended, you gain class ability energy. I found this to be helpful on the front end when we first placed our Rift, to make our Void Wells, to feed utility, to feed the other things. This helped us get that little bit of extra oomph to our Rift, so that this way we can cast the next one a little faster. The next thing that we're going to look at, though, is Overload Grenades. Void Grenades disrupt combatants, stunning them, delaying ability energy regeneration, and lowering combatant damage output, strong against Overload champions. This was very helpful when I didn't have a Rift, or I felt as though I didn't need to use the Overload from the Empowering Rift. The weakening effect from Undermining for our grenades is fantastic with dealing with champs in this way, because it ticks them down just that ever bit so faster. And finally, this last mod is something that I completely forgot existed until I was looking through the armor mods. Bolstering Detonation. Grant class ability energy when you cause damage with a grenade. This was extremely helpful to getting our Rift back in combination with Utility Kickstart and Well of Utility. When you damage something with a grenade, it's a one-time thing, but you get 25% of your Rift back. So you throw down your Rift, activate Utility Kickstart, throw out your grenade, and there's another 25% added on top of that, and then you defeat a target, get that chunk of energy back between just the general mods, matching subclass thing that they do, and then from Well of Utility. It's really big, but you make sure you cast that rift before anything else. Like, if you throw that grenade and cast your rift, and the bolstering detonation ticks before your kickstart won't work because your energy wasn't completely expended. It happened to me like once or twice when I was testing this, so it's not a big thing to worry about, but it can still happen. With that being said, though, that is the build. This build has been something that I've actually been really excited to make because, quite frankly, the Overload mods this season are just trash, Some people love them, hey, let me just spray this Overload with my Summoner for 3/4 of my clip and then have it never activate. With the Secant Filament boots, it's an instant stun. Sniper rifles, instant stun. Wither Horde, instant stun. And a cool interaction with Wither Horde is if you're standing in your rift and launch your Wither Horde and it doesn't stick, if the Overload walks into that puddle it makes, they still get overloaded. It's really nice. It's probably my favorite exotic combo right now, more so than my Orpheus and Collective Obligation. This build is just really, really strong and really good for endgame. This absolutely carried me in Glassway the other day. I hate Glassway. Glassway was my Glassway was my hump to my first Conqueror seal. But what you can do is you can place your rift, lob a Wither Horde in that middle door where you're trying to funnel everything through. As soon as those Overload Minotaurs hit that pool of Wither Horde, they're stunned, and you can just burst them down with whatever you have. But with that being said, that is the end of the video. I hope everybody enjoyed. Let's try to get to 400 subscribers before the end of May. Which is plenty of time. It's really nice to see everybody enjoying these videos. And I was also thinking about going back and picking a few builds that need to be updated into the current sandbox. And I would like to do that and call the series Reforged, because, armor is forged. These are armor builds primarily. So we're going to look and see if I can make some, quote, reforging of some of the older builds that I have that need to be updated into the current sandbox. I'm going to save any of my, Arc and Solar for when Arc and Solar come out, but for, Stasis and, Void, if there's anything else, that you want to see updated, please let me know in the comments, and I hope everybody has a good week.